What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Wreck Nation. Guys, listen, today we are checking out the rats of Tobruk. Okay? And probably, as like a double, the Battle of Tobruk, World War II, Libya. Alright, because on the to get to list are the rats of Tobruk. When I type that into YouTube, what pops out is War Stories, Rats of Tobruk. That's only like 3 minutes and 55 seconds long. Makes no sense. I see there's a really old 1944 movie called The Rats of Tobruk. And then I see there's a battle of... I'll share it with you guys. Stand by. Check this out. All right. The Rats of Tobruk, War Stories, Rats of Tobruk, and Battle of Tobruk. So I was thinking, let's check this one and this one out together. Because I don't know anything about this. So let's just dive in. Let's dive into it, guys. All right. As always, you guys are legends. Thanks so much for hopping on this journey with me. I'm learning as we go. I'm trying to, at least. All right, here we go. Ready? Let's just dive in. Let's start it. I hate that hover feature. Look, it spits me out. Hold on. Let's just Australian War Memorial. Cool. That's the channel. All right. So here we go, guys. Rats of Tobruk, and then after this, we'll get to the next one in line. Yeah, we'll get to the siege of Tobruk. So I'm here for it, guys. Let's go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Never heard of this.
70 years ago, Australian troops added to the already stellar reputation of the digger with their defence of a small but vital Mediterranean port. Their deeds have become legendary and their nickname part of our language. They were the Rats of Tobruk, and they are being commemorated in a new exhibition at the Australian War Memorial.
Ultimately, the war in North Africa was about the Suez Canal. The British forces wanted to protect it and Egypt because that maintained links with Britain and also Australasia and the Pacific. Tobruk was important because it was the best deepwater harbour in North Africa between Egypt and Libya. So Tobruk's a really big story.
Because the Tobruk garrison was forced to dig in under constant bombardment, the Nazi propagandist Lord Haw declared that they were caught like rats in a trap. The men, hearing this on the radio, adopted the name as a defiant badge of pride and became the Rats of Tobruk. Major General Leslie Morshead was their very aggressive commander. A Gallipoli veteran, his troops dubbed him Ming the Merciless. It was a spirit that he passed on to his men, who, rather than being passive and waiting for the Germans and Italians to come to them, went out into no man's land each night to patrol and to harass the enemy. Morshead's intention was to keep the enemy away from the outer perimeter. He summed up his policy of active defence quite simply. "Tobruk's not here to take it," he said. "We're here to give it." That defiance, along with qualities like mateship and humour, were in the tradition of the stories with which the rats had grown up, of what their fathers, uncles and older brothers had achieved in the First World War. They were very much the sons of the original Anzacs, and at Tobruk they achieved their own legendary status.
When people come and see the exhibition, they'll really see the personal stories behind the Rats of Tobruk. Some of the tools of war, such as lead weapons which the men carried into battle, but they'll also see a lot of those strong, quite personal effects.
The Siege of Tobruk offers examples of humour, mateship and endurance. It also has its stories of great heroism.
Jack Emerson was the first Australian of the Second World War to be awarded a Victoria Cross.
Oh, wow.
Jack was involved in a very bitter, bloody hand-to-hand action on the night of the 13th of April, where he saved the life of his commanding officer, but he was mortally wounded in that action. After Jack's death, his mother created this scrapbook of objects, newspaper articles, and it's that mother's love which is really encaptured in this exhibition. There's the service medals of John Johnson and the little supporting Battalion Association badge from his wife Josephine Johnson. He was a carpenter from rural Victoria. He was a father of 8 children when he went off to war. Each day the kids would write to John about the simple things, school, the chickens not laying eggs. Tragically though, Josephine gets a telegram saying John's been killed, but his letters continue to arrive home for some weeks after the event.
The exhibition at the Australian War Memorial is about men from all over Australia, from all sorts of backgrounds, who put in the most taxing of circumstances, achieved fame and earned an enduring nickname, the Rats of Tobruk.
Okay, so what's this? That's it? That's nuts. Okay, so now I need to know more. Okay, so we're gonna get out of there, and we're gonna get out of there. We're gonna search this again. Oh, it's right there. I'm an idiot. There it is. We're gonna get right into this. Because we got to. I need to know more. Let me see. Oh, there it is. Alright, so this is hopefully a little more in depth. But that... Hell yes. There's a couple documentaries. But they're all very short. Guys in the comment section. Like, this is the stuff that, like, I need your help on when we compile these lists. Like, give me the title, right, of the video, please, or send me the link of the video on Instagram, Arius in the Nation. That is the best way since YouTube hates links. All right, so I pulled up the video. This is just the Battle of Tobruk. All right, that's a very... All right, here we go. Let's just dive into it. I need to know, like, that. I don't think that was enough of a synopsis.
The port city of Tobruk would become the epicenter of the brutal African campaign during World War II, and it would push the Allies to unimaginable lengths in their attempt to defend it. In June of 1942, the German forces under the command of General Erwin Rommel were on the run from the British 8th Army. The Allies had recently liberated Tobruk from a famous 8-month siege in which the heroic actions of the 9th Australian maintained the port in Allied hands against overwhelming odds. As the 8th Army expelled the weakened and depleted Axis forces from eastern Libya, the Allied High Command figured it would be impossible for Rommel to launch a counteroffensive anytime soon. Calmly, General Neil Ritchie sent off many of the 8th Army back to Egypt and replaced the remaining troops with inexperienced soldiers. The miscalculation would prove fatal, as Rommel launched a fierce offensive that overwhelmed the Commonwealth forces. By June 20th, Tobruk was again under Axis siege, and the ensuing battle would severely change the course of the war. A new theater appears. Italy was not ready for war as World War II erupted over Europe. Knowing this, Benito Mussolini attempted to stay neutral during the conflict's initial phase. However, as the fall of France became inescapable, Mussolini realized Britain and France were too busy and too fragile to battle on another front. It was the perfect opportunity for Mussolini to accomplish his lifelong dream of expanding into Africa and restoring the Roman Empire under his rule. After the ease in which France had fallen before the Wehrmacht, Il Duce was sure that Britain and the rest of the Allies would collapse right away. Mussolini felt Italy was being held back by not having as many colonies and territories as other European nations. If he could take the regions of Gibraltar and the Suez Canal in Egypt from the United Kingdom, it would ensure Italy's control over the southern coast of the Mediterranean. Hence, on June 10, 1940, as France clutched at straws and collapsed before the Blitzkrieg, Italy declared war on Britain and France and immediately attempted to invade British-controlled Egypt. Mussolini's surprise attack was initially successful. His troops were able to gain a modest territory in Egypt, capturing the port city of Sidi Barrani. The British forces defending Egypt were few and thinly spread across a vast region. Still, What the Western Desert Force Army lacked in numbers made up for in experience and strategy. Richard O'Connor, the British commanding officer in the region, used deception and intelligence to get the upper hand on the Italian invaders. After building a defensive perimeter, O'Connor disguised his meager tank numbers by placing inflatable rubber tanks side by side with actual armored vehicles, fooling the Italians into believing they would clash with a massive force. In the face of a seemingly overpowering force, Italy then decided to halt its offensive, giving O'Connor enough time to regroup and plan a counterattack.
Wow.
Still, O'Connor only had 36,000 men at his disposal, while Italian troops numbered above 180,000. Using superior strategy and the support of the Royal Air Force, the embattled general struck at the invading forces and drove them out of Egypt. But O'Connor didn't stop at the border. He continued his campaign into Italian Libya, overpowering an increasingly demoralized Italian army. By January 12th, the city port of Tobruk was surrounded, and 10 days later it fell to O'Connor's forces. 27,000 Italian soldiers were captured, along with fuel, supplies, food, and weapons.
Wow.
In less than 2 months, O'Connor had trekked over 800 miles, wiped out an entire Italian army of 10 divisions, taken over 130,000 prisoners, 400 tanks, and 1,292 guns, at the cost of only 500 casualties and 1,373 wounded. The loss was humiliating and unbearable for Italy, and Hitler was livid. Africa Corps.
Africa Corps. All right.
It was the beginning of 1941, and Hitler was frustrated and embarrassed by Italy's humiliating defeat in northern Africa. To make matters worse, Mussolini's reckless attack on Egypt had caused Italy to lose most of Libya along with all its ports, which gave the Allies a significant advantage to supply an eventual liberation of Europe.
Okay.
Hitler then decided to deploy troops to northern Africa and help the Italians turn the tables. The man in command of what would be known as the Africa Corps was a brilliant and experienced general named Erwin Rommel. After arriving in what was left of Italian-occupied Libya, Rommel conducted an overwhelming surprise offensive, taking advantage of the fact that Commonwealth forces in the area did not expect a counterstrike from the Italians after the colossal defeat they had suffered. In the following months, Rommel recaptured Libya and forced the Allies back into Egypt. However, an important exception was Tobruk, which had been heavily fortified by the Allied forces. Rommel was forced to lay siege and wait. Inside the city, only one division of mainly Australian soldiers held a legendary defense for over 8 months, until December 7th, when a reinforced Allied counteroffensive from Egypt, codenamed Operation Crusader, could break the siege and push Rommel back.
My God, dude.
As Rommel had been unable to capture Tobruk, his supply lines extended all the way back to the port of Tripoli, 1,000 miles away. With little fuel, food, and ammunition, he was forced to retreat as the Allies freed Tobruk. The valiant efforts of the defenders became a source of pride and a morale booster for all Allied soldiers in the war. But the victory would be short-lived. A second siege. Once again, the Allies assumed the defeated Rommel was weak and depleted, and were confident that he would take defensive positions back in western Libya. But Rommel would surprise them on January 21, 1942, when he launched another offensive on the startled and unprepared Allies. Rommel advanced quickly, using unrelenting circling maneuvers, and the Allies could only slow him down as they approached Tobruk. The encounter became a stalemate 60 miles off the city, where the Allied troops created a defensive semicircle of trenches, barbed wire, landmines, and tank traps. Rommel realized that approaching Tobruk from the west would be impossible due to the Allied entrenchment. Thus, on May 27th, the Axis forces attempted to undercut them from the south. The Allies barely held the line in the south, but Rommel was quicker. He rushed back west and successfully encircled the defending troops in the northwest part of the defensive semicircle with the help of Italian forces. On June 11th, the Allies were forced back into the city as their defensive barrier collapsed. The city fell into chaos as the Axis approached, and 8th Army Commander Neil Ritchie received conflicting instructions from his superiors. Military commanders were telling him that his troops should not become trapped in the city under any circumstance, and telegrams from Winston Churchill demanded that Tobruk was not to fall to the Axis advance. Furthermore, Ritchie was instructed that in the event of the imminent fall of Tobruk, the 8th Army should evacuate, not before destroying all the resources available to them. A nearby airfield, holding tens of thousands of gallons of fuel, plus a significant number of food rations and ammunition crates, were of particular concern to the Allied High Command. Ritchie eventually decided to evacuate, as the Axis advance seemed unstoppable, and the 13th and 30th Corps were ordered to retreat to Egypt, leaving only the 2nd South African Division to hold the city. By June 18th, Rommel had surrounded the city, and the Allies had failed to destroy most of the supplies. That night, Rommel reported to Hitler that Tobruk was under siege once again. The battle. On June 19th, Rommel rearranged his troops in preparation for an attack. The battle began at 5:20 a.m. on June 20th with a concentrated air bombardment on the southeastern boundary, and the Luftwaffe executed 588 raids.
Wow.
Artillery attacks then commenced at 7 a.m., along with the incursion of Gruppe Mini, a battalion with 38 medium tanks. A breach in the line was achieved at 7:45 a.m., and the German 900th Engineer Battalion bridged over the anti-tank ditch, using prefabricated equipment. The 4th Battalion, Royal Tank Regiment, was instructed to counterattack, but the orders arrived too late. When the Allies reached the enemy forces, most tanks had already crossed the ditches. The Afrika Korps then defeated the British armor using divide-and-conquer maneuvers, aided by a relentless attack from Luftwaffe aircraft. By noon, Rommel had inserted 113 tanks into the perimeter, and just an hour later, the Afrika Korps reached the King's Cross intersection on the Pilestrina Ridge. The last barrier for the Panzers was an assortment of artillery units that put up a stiff resistance, including the use of several 3.7-inch anti-aircraft guns against the German tanks. Rommel later hailed their, quote, extraordinary tenacity.
They use anti-aircraft weapons against tanks? Love that. Love that. You know, I don't know why. I don't know why. For me, first and foremost, like, I'm not one to criticize anyone telling history, but my dude needs to slow it down a little bit because it's coming pretty fast, right? At least for me, right out of the gate, this is intense. This is an intense engagement. So, due to, first and foremost, let me just take it back a little bit. I didn't know Italy had done what Italy did in along the coast in Africa and completely failed. Right? And then the Allies come in, undo what the Italians did. Then the Germans come in and basically wave over them and push them back. But they're trying to keep a deep a deep port. And it's all for the Suez Canal. Right? Okay. All right. And then so the rats of Tobruk are the Australian division that put up the fight in this battle. The ones that were basically a massive thorn in the side for Rommel's advancement in trying to get Tobruk. So, okay, I'm tracking. Guys, the African theater, yeah. I'm not familiar with it. I think that we just got introduced to the Pacific theater in World at War. We have not yet touched the African theater of World at War, or if they even touch on it. So I'm not sure. So, you know, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but that's okay. That's okay, because I'm here to learn as much as I can. You know, and repetition is how I learn. So this is all good for me. And this is, honestly, I didn't know. I mean, it's almost like my catchphrase right now. I didn't know.
By 6 p.m., the Axis troops were inside the city, and the Allies desperately tried to burn all the supplies they could, while also destroying their own communication equipment. Still, most of the Allied units ceased fire or withdrew to Fort Pilestrino to the west only 45 minutes later. The final evacuation of small Allied ships took place under fire. 15 craft escaped, but 25, including a minesweeper, were sunk in the harbor or lost to airstrikes on their way to Alexandria. At dawn the next day, the Allies officially capitulated. It was the second biggest surrender of British forces as far back as the fall of Singapore, and an estimated 32,200 soldiers were captured and taken into POW camps in Italy. In addition, Rommel captured a massive number of supplies that the Allies failed to destroy. The defeat became legendary throughout the Western world and severely hurt the morale of the Allied troops in Africa. Churchill learned about the devastating defeat while meeting at the White House with President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The Prime Minister was in shock, and he would later recall, quote, "I did not attempt to hide from the President the shock I'd received. It was a bitter moment. Defeat is one thing, disgrace is another. There were no reproaches, not an unkind word was spoken. What can we do to help?" said Roosevelt. I replied at once, "Give us as many Sherman tanks as you can spare and ship them to the Middle East as quickly as possible." The defeat marked a turning point in the African theater. With fresh supplies, Rommel would become unstoppable for many months and bring Allied troops in Libya and Egypt to the brink of destruction.
Wow.
Thank you for watching.
All right. I mean, hey guys, we're here to learn, and I didn't know anything about this. It's never too late. Never too late to start learning, right, guys? And that's why we're building the best community that exists on YouTube, right here on the Rec Nation. Because we can do this stuff. This is our channel. Listen, guys, I can't wait. I can't wait to get to all the content, all the suggestions. Just a matter of when we get to them. I've only so much time. I wish I could just record everything, right, in one time and just have it uploaded, but that's not how it works. Anyway, guys, listen, thank you for rocking with me. Thank you for rocking with the channel. Guys, listen, I know when I'm like, I need, here's my olive branch. I don't mind revisiting some of these things that we check. It's not like I'm going to react to one version of the, for example, the SAS, the Iranian embassy siege. We got to the animated version, which, yeah, okay, whatever. That's like on a fact-finding mission. We're out there. We're checking out the I guess the condensed version of it, and then you guys told me to check out real footage, and so we opted for the documentary, and then we went and watched 6 Days, and that reaction to the movie 6 Days is on the Rumble channel. I'm pointing this way because that's where my little sign is right there. So I don't mind revisiting these moments in history, because I feel like I need to absorb it more, and the more type of content there is on a certain subject or certain battle, that whereas one documentary might glance over it, there is a more singled out version of the individuals that participated in said battle, or the strategies implemented in said battle, and it breaks that battle down a little bit more, so I don't mind revisiting some stuff at all, guys. I would definitely need some help though picking out the right videos, because I feel like this is two different videos, but I want to put them together because I feel like they belong together, even though one is more celebrating the legends that are the Australian troops, that the rats of Tobruk that held the line against overwhelming numbers, and then this next half was just, I guess, a snapshot of the Battle of Tobruk. So anyway, guys, I appreciate your patience as we build, as we grow here on the channel. It's really important. As I said on my other channels, guys, make sure you're part of the community, not just a subscriber to the channel. There's a big difference. Keep tabs on the community posts. That's how I update everything that's going on the channel. I try to do a pretty good job Wednesdays and Sundays, because that's when we also upload our World at War reactions on Rumble and on Embrace the Suck 21's Patreon. So much love, guys. Make sure you unplug, do something legendary, and let me know what you think in the comments. I feel like there's no wrong video to check out. It's just we peek behind the door, right? We peek behind the door. Is this somewhere we want to go? Is this somewhere we want to dive further into, or not? This is how we do it. Anyway, guys, much love. I will see you all in the next video. Later, guys.